Oh, hey, pilot. Welcome to launching. I'm going to start this YouTube adventure by showing you a day that I should have stayed on the ground, that I'm not a perfect pilot. So if you're ready, let's get grounded. So here I am flying at the Red Rocks 2021. Let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, maybe not that much. The Red Rocks Fly-In is an annual event held in Monroe, Utah, and run by the Central Utah Air Sports Association, CUASA. They have a fairly simple webpage, but the better way to get in touch is through Facebook. I'll leave links to both below. As I said, it's in Monroe, Utah, in the United States, western portions. It's about 2.5 hours south of Salt Lake City. Zoom in, there we go. It's a desert town situated in a valley. Now, so we can get a view of that valley. Pretty far west before you hit another mountain, and then sitting right up against the east. There's some other ridges here that kind of box this valley in a little bit. So it is subject to strong valley winds, and it can be rather thermic. In terms of landing zone, it's marked here. I'll show you a short clip. It's been improved. There's now grassy spots. Keep an eye on that. You zoom out and you look here to the east. Up a 45-minute drive on a gravel road is the Cove Launch, C-O-V-E. And then also of importance is a power line, high-tension power line that runs just here east of town, and the Red Hill Hot Springs, which are great for relaxing, but also a good note for a bailout landing zone if you don't have the height to clear the power lines. Ideally, if you don't get enough altitude off of launch, it's best to just head out into the valley, clear the power lines, and then head south toward the LZ, which is what I did. If you head to hikeandfly.org, you pick a spot on the map, and you choose a glide ratio. Now, in my opinion, I think 7 is a pretty reasonable glide ratio for a modern glider. You can see how far, without wind or thermal, you can expect to glide. In this case, if I had taken off from where I did, I should expect 268 meters AGL above ground level, or roughly 850 feet. But they're really quick to warn you here. Again, assume static air, no wind, no thermals. So I should have had plenty of altitude to clear these power lines and get in. Back up for just a second. Earlier in the day, as a front was about to move in, the winds were forecast to pick up pretty substantially from the south and then sweep north. As it turns out, the air was also very, very sinky. It had a lot of sink to it. And I was riding up with a group of pilots who were more experienced and definitely pretty gung-ho to try to get one more in before the day got too bad. And that should have been red flag number 1. But I was also eager to fly because I was all the way down there. I'd made the trip, and all of that I should have realized was a sunk cost and not worth the risk of safety. It didn't end up hurting me, but it definitely could have. Anywho, as you bump down in glide ratio, you can see that you get lower or shorter and shorter distances. And where I ended up landing would have required somewhere around a 4.5 or even 4 glide ratio, somewhere between 4 and 4.5. Because I was able to come over, clear the power lines, and head south, and barely land on this hill, which would have given me, as it says here, 3 meters AGL, and that's actually about right. So I had a side hill landing, which I didn't record because, well, I was a little busy. Anyway, there's this giant ravine, which with winds coming from the south would have caused a lot of rotors, so I didn't land there. There's fence and horses and things over there, so that wasn't the landing option. So I landed here. Now, side landing, not the worst thing in the world. Takes a little patience, takes a little courage. But all in all, not too bad. Let's go ahead and talk about this now when it's fresh. I ignored the direction of the launch director and club local president, Stacy, when he said, don't launch in these conditions, or I wouldn't launch in these conditions. These are the conditions in which someone gets hurt. Had I been a freshly minted pilot, that might have been true. But my ambitious self stupidly kind of ignored the guy who knew the place really well and said, these other pilots are launching? I'll launch. Bad idea. One, the winds were picking up, and everyone being really gung-ho is an easy attitude to get swept up in. So the wise move would have been hang out with my friends, go have a pancake breakfast. But no, I'm okay. Just the side hill landing and a little scratching on my shins. Another thing that worked against me is I'm on a large wing. It's about 29 square meters, and I am 3 kilograms or so from the bottom of that weight range. So while it climbs a little bit well, the speed is notably retarded from its otherwise trim if you were, say, 5 kilos from the top. Having flown other wings in the last week where that was the case, there is a substantial speed difference.
Pause that thought for just a second. I'm flying an Atlas II. At relatively high wing loading, so relatively high on the wing's weight range, all up, you, the reserve, the wing, everything, I can expect somewhere around 21, maybe 22 miles per hour, but for the sake of conservative numbers, we'll stay 21. I know that based on my position in the weight range, I'm arriving at somewhere around 20 miles an hour. Now, if I fly a higher aspect ratio wing, like the Explorer 2, high in the weight range, and I compare that to the low speed of the lower aspect wing, I'm looking at roughly a 25% speed difference. Now, that is obviously very consequential in terms of percentage. In actuality, roughly 5 miles an hour, maybe 8 kilometers per hour total. Now, that may not seem like much if you're not terribly familiar with the numbers, but it is actually a substantial jump. And by the time you span an hour, multiple hours in the air, you've suddenly covered a substantially longer distance.
And in windy conditions in mountains I don't know, I chose to fly. Bad move. Now sure, I've got my rating, but rating doesn't keep you from doing things you shouldn't. Anywho, now I've got a bit of a walk of shame back to the car. Luckily not too far, maybe a mile. But I'm on city streets already, and I've got water.
Thanks for watching. I just wanted to illustrate what safety looks like in terms of not having an actual crash, and the things that I did that kind of stacked against myself that I either chose to ignore or didn't pay attention to. Anyway, if you like this, give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. If you don't like it, leave a mean internet comment. I don't care. Whatever. Just don't hit the dislike button. And if you want to see more like this and you think I've earned it, hit subscribe. Have fun, be safe, and I'll see you in the sky.